Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's so lovely to have you guys around. And yeah, today's topic is the danger of single stories and how we could kind of change our narrative of our experience of people, of culture, of a place, or just generally how we kind of tell our stories. I think stories are very, very powerful. I think the way we tell our stories and the way we relate our stories to others could actually bring about unity or tear us apart. The way we tell our stories could actually build us or actually tear us down. And it's so important that our stories um, are, are diverse, and our stories is not just one dimensional, that our stories are colorful. This video is inspired by Chimamanda Adichie. I love her. She's a Nigerian author, and she had a TED talk a few years ago, and I recently watched that TED talk, and I felt like, yeah, I should make a video about my own experience of single stories and how I have had to kind of grow and learn how to tell my stories or my experience the right way, and to kind of not just focus on just one side of my experience, but actually to be broader whenever I tell my stories. And because oftentimes, let's just face it, the bad experience we have kind of stick with us. That is, if we choose to, we could actually also choose to just tell about our good experience, and or to emphasize on our good experience, and that's what I try to do. But just from our kind of way of telling stories, or the tradition of us telling stories, we actually we kind of gravitate towards telling the bad ones and kind of emphasizing on them, and kind of, yeah, a few good things happen too. But yeah, I just want to encourage us with this video that we could actually also give the same emphasis we give on the bad stories or on the bad narrative. We could also give that much emphasis on the good ones too. One story that comes to mind when I think about single story is one experience that I had when I started studying. I just got admission. I was the only foreign student in my class of 65 at the moment, and I remember after a few days or so, one of my classmates came up to me. He had been in Botswana a year before he started studying, and he came up to me. I was like, "Ah, you must be from a rich family. Your father must be involved in politics for you to have the opportunity to study in Germany." And I looked at him, I'm like, no. Actually, I grew up in a middle class home, and no, my father didn't necessarily have the resources to kind of finance an education abroad, that I had to work for me to pay my rent and pay my fees. And then he started telling me about his experience of why he was in Botswana. You know, the picture that people in the Western world have of Africa as a continent are pictures of war, of starvation, of corruption. I was talking about one experience that there was a girl that didn't have food to eat. I was just looking at him, I'm like, you were in Botswana for 1 year, and I believe you had different experiences, but for me it sounded like he went there to confirm this picture he had in his head all this while. As a teenager, as a young person of Africa, he went there and confirmed it. He had this one situation where a child didn't have food to eat, and that was for him the confirmation that, yeah, the pictures we see on the TV and everything is true. So I went ahead and asked him that, did you ever see a child that grew up in a normal household and had food to eat, had education? I was like, yeah, there were a few of them too. Do you ever tell, when you talk about your experience of while you were in Botswana, do you ever place the same emphasis you place on that one child you saw that didn't have food to eat, or that is homeless, and if you place that same emphasis on also the stories of children you saw going to school, having food to eat, having normal family, having parents that are working and that went to school and studied. It was like, yeah, but it's not that important. And I remember looking at him and thinking, how do I educate his ignorance? I just looked at him and I told him that the next time you tell people about your experience, I would encourage you also to place just as much emphasis on the good you saw while you were in Botswana. One typical narrative that I know of also is that whenever I'm with my friends that come from foreign countries, like they're studying here or working, or I don't know, whenever we're in this group and we're talking about our experience in Germany, and there's always this one person that says, oh, Germans are racist, and that gets on my nerves too. Like, I'm like, seriously, if your whole experience of the German people, of the German culture, of this country as a whole is summed up in just this one sentence, then you have a problem. Like, no, I'm serious. Like, if that's all you have to say, and people kind of are surprised when they ask me like, so how is it like living in Germany? And all I have to tell them is how awesome it is, how many opportunities are opened to me, or how I loved studying here, or how the friendships that I've made and everything. Like, they look at me and like, oh, don't you have experience? I'm like, come on. Like, I experienced tribalism back home in Nigeria. I experienced, which for me, I would say from my own point of view is even worse than racism. Like, that is how I say it, but everyone says it differently. Like, I experienced gender inequality while I was back. It's not that I don't experience that while I'm here. It's just that I choose not to kind of focus on those experiences. Like, they're part of my experience, and I think when it's in the right sphere to talk about those topics, I would talk about them. But you generally asking me about my experience here in Germany for the 8 years that I've lived here, I think it's just unfair for anyone to kind of just sum it up to just this one sentence. I find it really saddening and really heartbreaking when people just kind of yeah, like they just narrow down their experience. That's the right word. They narrow down their experience to just the negative and never really emphasize on the positive too. I was at a conference a few weeks ago, at a women conference, and there were like around 500 women in the room, and we had a guest speaker to talk, and she talked about, she was a missionary. I guess she was a missionary in Uganda. I'm not sure, because when she talked about her experience also, she just said Africa, so I don't know where exactly she was actually as a missionary, but I think it was in Uganda. And I remember she came on stage, and she was talking about our experience of being robbed at a point, and she almost lost her life and everything. Like, guys, I don't want to take away from my experience of getting robbed. I think it's heartbreaking that would ever happen to anyone anywhere in the world. But let's face it, there are good people and there are bad people everywhere. That is, in every society you find yourself, you find good people and you find bad people. Like, that is how our world, it's not that the bad people are more concentrated in Africa and the good people are more concentrated here in Europe. No, guys. that's not reality. You have bad experience and you have good experience. But by the way, she was talking about this experience, and she was like, yeah, thank God she didn't lose her life and everything. And I remember sitting down there, the only thing she mentioned about her experience of being a missioner in Uganda, I guess, was that she was robbed and she wasn't killed. And she was talking about having written a book about her experience and everything. And I remember just sitting down there looking at this 500 women. For these women, it was a confirmation that you're not safe when you're anywhere in Africa or when you're, and I remember just looking at her and my heart breaking for this 500 plus women, because the thing is, when these women go home and their kids, their husband, their family asks them, how was the conference, or how was the guest speaker, what did she talk about? I guess they will talk about a few other things that she did talk about, but one thing I'm very sure they would definitely talk about is how dangerous it is to be in Africa. And I remember getting home that day and I wrote her an email and I was like, I loved what you said on stage, up until you mentioned your experience in somewhere in Uganda where you were robbed, and kind of generalizing that or projecting that experience on a whole continent. And I remember mentioning in the email that I hope that when next you go to another conference or occasion where you are given a platform to talk about your experience of the continent Africa, you don't just narrow it down to just that one experience. I didn't read the book. I hope that in our book she mentioned a few good experience she did have while she was a missionary in Uganda. Yeah, like it's so, sometimes you underestimate the power, the influence we have with the way we tell our stories. Like, it's not just shaping our immediate cycle, but sometimes you have a platform, and it's so important that you, when you kind of talk about people, or when you talk about places you've been to, or when you talk about culture and everything, that you kind of communicate it in the right language, that people don't get the wrong image. I think it's very important that we talk about the good and the bad. I'm also not just here saying should only talk about the good. That would be very naive of me to say, but I think we should emphasize on the good stories just as on the bad stories. We shouldn't just focus on the bad, but we should emphasize on the good also, and let people be aware that, okay, it's not just bad things happening in this country, or this culture is just known for this bad thing, but they do something good also, and that we are just sensitive to that, and because it shapes the way the next generation sees the world. Because if you look at it, our world is becoming more and more a global village, and you have people who look different than you are. It's not something new to kind of walk down the streets of Berlin and see people of 20 nationalities within an hour. Like, it's not strange, it is normal. And it's so important that when you have that much diversity in our world today, that we have the right picture also, that we don't have just the negative narrative, that we have the right narrative, and that when we write books also, and it's not just by talking, when we read literature, and that we have the right information also, that we get the right information, and it's just that it's not one-sided. So yeah, that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. I hope it was informative and encouraging. And yeah, if you liked it, make sure you thumbs up and comment down below. Tell me about your experience of single story and how you've had to deal with kind of redefining the way you tell your stories. And yeah, I would love to know from you guys. I would love to hear from you guys. And yeah, have a lovely day ahead and see you soon. Bye bye.